long is this oversight mesh? Meshing in.
It's going to take an hour on this one. We did our little protein rest, got all the grain in. Mash started at 7:40, so we're going to go half hour, 1:45, and then another half hour at 1:55.
Basically, this is post-brewing, and we want to talk about what we're going to name this beer, how collabs work, and how the hell did this beer come about. So, I think I'll start off because, Chuck, you were the guy who said, I have one of Mark Naski's recipes. And of course, Mark was one of our good friends.
Yeah, I mean, Tina, basically, his wife, at one point she asked me for a bunch of his stuff and I sent it off to her. She's been homebrewing more now. She's out in Idaho. Anyway,
and Mark, hang on, before we
Mark
go into
Naski.
that, Mark was the guy who was very instrumental.
Yeah, kind of my mentor and so on and so forth.
Mentor of yours. He helped out with a few recipes here. Oh, by the way, I guess I should introduce
Probably
everybody
all
who's
of them.
here. You can't see this if you're not on the video, but across from me, Eric Bramwell from Riverlands Brewing Company. Next to him, Chuck Fort, who is a senior brewing consultant here at Church Street. Sean Greger, who is the head brewer, and man, he did enough work good. And then me, that's Phil, the Brit. So that's enough of that. Back to Chuck. So yeah, Mark was a good friend of ours. He was a co-host on the podcast.
Yeah, so Tina shot me off this Zoigl recipe, handwritten, it's like in pen or maybe pencil, I can't tell. But it was back when we were pretty busy, a couple months ago. It's just like everybody wanted beer, so I was just kind of like, okay, yeah, and I filed it away. And then as things started slowing down, I thought, this is the time to do it. So then,
I think I said to you,
Well-
hey, do you have a recipe that we could do for Mark, because it's been about a year since
Right.
he passed away,
and it's sort of it's a general recipe. Certain parts of it were kind of left up to the brewer, so that's where the collab between
We could fill in
Riverlands and Church Street. So we kind of filled that in for ourselves, and here we are brewing today. It came out pretty nice. It looks like it's going to be a gold. We just brewed it, so we don't know for sure, but it looks like it's going to be sort of a golden color.
And then Eric, I was down at your brewery, and I said, hey, we're going to love to brew one of Mark's beers, and you said, I remember him distinctly saying, I would love to come down and brew at Church Street. So we hooked you up. Are you allowed to say hooked up, or does that have another meaning these days? I don't know.
You'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Well, I've always been a big fan of your guys' beer. And, I've told the story a couple times today, but for the podcast listeners, I guess.
Eric has been on our podcast a couple of times.
Yes. So my first experience with Church Street was at the Midwest Beer Fest down at Plainfield. And one of the years I used to go when I was just getting into craft beer there, and I'll always remember my first experience with your guys' beer was Heavenly Hellas there won Best in Show one of the years that I was going to this.
I was pouring beer for that one.
All right, so then we met before this.
That was like the first thing I did for church.
Hang on a sec, we're going to interrupt.
Yeah.
Yes, we're recording here.
Oh, sorry. Hey, hi, everybody.
This is Don. Hello,
Don
say
the
hello,
legend.
Don.
DTL.
Don the legend.
You guys have a good day. Thanks
Don
for
the
watching.
man.
Are you leaving?
Yes, I am.
Goodbye.
Let's just say goodbye. nothing but cut and dry here, right?
See you later, Don. Cheers,
You talk louder?
Yeah, I got him way back there.
Yeah, no, he's like way back there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, where were we? Oh yeah.
So Heavenly Hell was one best in show that year. I ran over, made sure I tried that beer. At the time, I was super into German lager, so I tried that beer and was absolutely blown away by it. So I've been a fan for quite some time. So this was a collab that I was very, very excited about.
And that was the first thing I ever did for Church Street was I poured there. I got my my Bassett certification and all that, so I was official. And then when I went over there, it's like, okay, you pour for someone. So like, no, I want to pour for Church Street. And I was like, well, okay, fine. And we're pouring, and then at some point somebody comes around and goes, whispers to us, hey, get ready, you're getting ready to be slammed. It's like, why? It's because your beer, took best to show. It's like, oh my gosh. So when that happens, then usually the crowd like focuses in on beer. And so
And the Midwest,
I was one of them.
the Midwest Brewers Fest used to be held down in Plainfield and was one of, I think, the original beer festivals held in a large field.
Yeah.
Not held anymore, but that's another story.
it got a rain out.
It was a rain out.
That was
yeah.
kind of the nail of the coffin.
So let's turn our attention to Sean here. Now, Sean, from the perspective of my association with Church Street, which is very much from the outsider and the drinking point of view, you're a relative newcomer to me because you used to be down in Ohio, am I correct?
It was Cincinnati
Kentucky,
Metro,
Ohio?
but
Okay,
yeah,
Cincinnati
Kentucky
Metro.
side of the river.
At Beerkus, if I remember rightly.
Yep.
But you are a family member,
Yep.
Sean Gregor, Lisa and Joe, the owners. And you've come back here now, but I recently found out today that you were actually doing things at the brewery when you were relatively young. And they've been going for 10 years, folks. But so we won't say what age he was when he was doing that. But, you're now back because you wanted to take over from basically Chuck was head brewer at the time. Now Chuck's getting older.
Yeah.
So tell us, you've done many collaborations. What did you like when Chuck came to you with this Zoigl recipe? And we'll talk about Zoigl in a second.
Well, I think it's kind of like Mark was Chuck's mentor. Chuck was kind of mine, and that I kind of learned how to brew here from he and TJ, our first head brewer. So I mean, I'd met Mark dozens of times, and gone over to his place and tried what he made, and he had his hands in a lot of our lager recipes too. So, anything that Mark kind of made, I trust the recipe. I know it's going to be good. Like they said, he left a little bit up for interpretation, so you can kind of make it your own. But it's, like a lot of German lagers, it's a pretty simple recipe. And if you follow the steps and make it well, it's going to be a good beer. And just got to do it.
Let's talk about that. The Zoigl, a lot of people are going, what the hell is a Zoigl? And I didn't really know until I really got into you giving me the recipe or saying, yeah, let's brew a Zoigl. I looked it up, and it's a very old, historic recipe that is a very heavily communal beer. A very, I think it was done, we're reading, in maybe 5 or 6 different towns in northern Bavaria, was it?
Near Munich, between Munich and the Czech Republic, some little
In the,
towns.
what they used to call the Palatine area or something.
Yeah. That area.
Yeah.
And so, Chuck, you're the beer historian here. What's the
So
story?
I remember Mark's first was brewing this at our homebrew club, and it's like, well, these towns, they would have a brewery in the center, but it would just create the wort, and they'd go out to these surrounding houses that they had Mark designated with stars, and
the brewer's star.
Yeah, they'd give them the wort, and they, ferment it out and whatever. So each one's going to taste a little different depending on what they do. But they're pretty basic recipes. It's just more the technique and just sort of the whole the aspect of it. It's very old. It's something that they did many centuries ago.
Yeah.
And so now there's a lot of different, I suppose, interpretations. I mean, some of them, some of the Zoigls, that Mark first brewed were really kind of DMS-y because he'd only boil them for like a minute or two, and that was it. I didn't want to do that, but I mean, there's just, like I say, so there's some some variation there.
Now this brewer followed it through. You boiled it for an hour, right?
Yeah. We did.
We did a pretty typical
And that's,
brew day.
is that a
in
relatively
commercial
short
setting.
brew for a lager?
60 to 90 minutes
Yeah,
is pretty
okay.
good.
Yeah,
Okay.
But some of the older traditional Zoigls may not have gotten boiled very long ago.
Yeah.
Just
It almost reminds me, like, hearing about it is like home brewing or almost like German farmhouse brewing or something. You know, we're not necessarily using ingredients at hand. It seemed like it was a little bit more of a traditional lager grist, but I think probably process varied from house to house or whoever was producing.
Yeah.
Sure.
and you're in Munich area, so you're probably a lot of Munich malt heavy.
Right,
Munich
yeah.
malt, obviously.
So in this particular brew, you used, what was the malt bill?
A lot of Munich malt. So I think there's Pilsner and then like 40% Munich or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the water, which is water, but you know, you added in noble hops. What were they?
Tettnang and Saaz. So German Tettnang hops and then Saaz from Czech Republic.
Okay, so very, very minimal so far.
Right.
What about the yeast? Ale or lager? This is a lager,
It
so
is
I'm
a
going to
lager.
assume it's a lager.
Yep.
Okay, and is this your house yeast?
Yeah, it's the Gondex strain is what we use on most of our lagers.
Okay, cool. So hopefully when this beer comes out, it's going to be real basics. And I want to go back to that blue star that they used to hang outside, which told everybody, here's where you come to get this batch of beer.
Yeah.
And it was a 6-star, a blue 6-star, a 6-pointed star. 3 of them were the elements, which I used to think was Earth, Wind, and Fire. I found out it wasn't. It was air, water, and
I think fire was the
fire.
other.
Yeah. And then the other 3 were back in the 1400s, the 3 ingredients which they knew then, which was water, barley, and hops. The yeast didn't come in. It was all natural yeast, right? So very a la
They didn't know
cool ship type of
the
thing, yeah.
microbiology of it, you know, by that point.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah. So obviously we've kind of made this a little bit more modern and sophisticated.
Sure.
But what I really like about this is the fact that it was a communal beer, and that's what we want to, you know, really focus on this when this beer gets released. And now here we are, middle of August kind of thing. It's going to be ready when? Middle to the end of what?
5 or 6
September?
weeks.
Yeah.
5 or 6 weeks, yeah. I won't be here. Well, that's okay. You can save some for me. Have a good time. But it's a communal beer, so that was what Mark was all about. He was a home brewer. He'd come and talk to brewers. But what he really enjoyed was sitting down at a bar, or a brewery, trying their beer. And at the moment, Chuck's wearing a Schlafly hat. He went down to Schlafly. He was down there.
I
a
got
lot.
this hat when I went down there with him.
There you go. And so he was all about community because he would try the beer and then he'd strike up a conversation either with the brewer, with somebody at the bar, whatever, talking about beer. And that's what we hope this is going to be. Do we know what we're going to call this? Do we have any?
You had somebody.
We have some ideas.
Yeah, we had some ideas.
But
I'm usually not the person that names things. I'm the
Okay.
last one to find out usually.
so did anybody here have a name? Because I think I know what it's going to be called. I really like the name, but anybody have any different?
you were
names?
saying
The one I heard was When I'm a Fan. I'll let you break the news on that one, but I'm behind that name as well.
Okay.
If
So
that's
I
the
heard,
direction.
and I think this was Sean, this was your brother who came up with this,
Okay.
who is also part of the brewery, Stephen, right?
Yep.
And he's going to, and I like this name entirely because it encompasses what Church Street is. You know, there's a certain church religious tone to all your names. And also it relates to Mark, and we're going to call it Book of Mark. And I think that's a great name for this. And we're going to come up with a great label. And I hope that everybody comes by to Church Street. And I'm assuming you're going to get some
Yeah,
Riverlands,
we'll
right?
have it
Yeah,
at
there we go.
for sure,
So in St. Charles, Itasca, you can come by and try this beer because there's not many Zoigls out there. Nope. There ain't no Book of Marks, I can tell you that. And I think that this is a great, testament to a guy who was influential in many of our lives. So we're all drinking beer at the moment. I think we better find out what we are because, it wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't drink a beer. So let's start with Eric. What are you drinking?
I've got the tried and true Heavenly Helles right here. Like I said, it's the beer that brought me onto Church Street as a fan. I continue to be a fan of this beer. It's one of, if not the best Helles in the Chicagoland area. This beer's phenomenal. Can't go wrong with Heavenly Helles.
Chuck?
I'm drinking Eric's Riverlands Pilsner.
Kayak.
The kayak bill.
Okay, yeah. And I've been working on it for a very short time now. I'm starting to run out. I'll probably have to go. I don't think there's another one left in there. But
Time for another beer.
Okay.
And you've got in a fantastic glass, I don't know if you can see it, but it's the Sugar Creek Valley glass. And is that the special beer that you did with them?
Yeah, that's
so
the.
Tell us about that.
This is the Special Hell. This is another collab we did with Sugar Creek, and they're just north of Indianapolis. We made basically a batch of Heavenly Helles, except with their under-modified German Pilsner, and walked it through a more intensive mash to really break it down. So it's a little paler, kind of a different malt flavor, but that was the only change to the recipe. It's the same yeast, the same hops. Everything else is the same. We just switched them all.
I want to ask you, have you got, like on this glass, is there a little engraving on the bottom? Because you've got a little line of bubbles that are coming up now. You obviously can't really see this if you're doing video, you can't really see it. But it's just coming up the middle. It's just awesome looking.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
The company we got this from etched the street sign logo into the bottom of the glass, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, and that looks really good. And I've had that. It's got very grassy flavor to it, but it's only very grassy. It's a subtle grassiness. So I like that. I'm drinking your Hefeweizen, which I find to be a very good one, very balanced, not too clovey, a little more banana-y. And I think this is your recipe or your recipe?
No,
not mine.
I didn't touch that recipe.
Who laid? Who? So
No,
this
when I
TJ's?
came on, I think TJ kind of put that one together, and maybe your dad might have had some influence.
Yeah, that would have been those two. That was one of the original beers. So that was-
Original beer.
I think he got the yeast for that, didn't he?
yeah, it's the Ondex Weizen yeast.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yep.
Which is what you use a lot of, right?
Yeah, coincidentally, yeah. I really like their lager strain, so.
Yeah. Well, okay, folks, come out towards the end of September. I think your social media person, Amanda Steinbreaker, is going to be sending out all sorts of information about when it's going to be coming out. I'm going to be in the UK, so I'll be drinking tons of bitter, hopefully. But I'll be back in October, and you better keep some for me, you bastards.
I'll hide some somewhere.
Yeah. So I think we should raise our glass because thank you so much for allowing the Brit and Yankee to be part of this. Thank you for collabing, Eric. Sean,
very excited.
and everything.
Thanks for coming out.
It's not going to sound very good because we've got plastic glasses.
We got two
and they
glass.
So we got 1, 2, 3. Here's to Mark. Look at Mark. Cheers. Want to clang again?
Yeah.
Clang again.
Very beautiful.
At least we have a good clang. Thanks, guys.